I'm still responding to Kyle's preaching, and this episode is going to be completely demonetized. In fact, I'm not even going to try. That's because we're talking about rape. So, anyways, here's the but on rape.
Well, continue with me. I don't even like to discuss this particular idea, but it needs to be discussed. Rape and evolution. If we were to ask the almost absurd question, could you ever go to the New Testament and find justification for this type of activity? You would quickly understand that such could never be the case. Listening to the words of Jesus Christ.
And he goes on to quote Bible verses as preachers do. And yes, I'm pretty sure that you can't justify rape using the New Testament. And that's pretty okay because for the most part, Christianity is based on the New Testament. But it kind of begs the question, what about the Old Testament that the New Testament was based on? Can you justify rape using the Old Testament? Yes, actually, you can. There are several places in the Old Testament where Israelites raped, in fact, were ordered to rape the virgins of tribes they took over. In fact, there was one time where they didn't capture enough virgins for everyone, so they waited at some sort of festival, kidnapped the dancers there, took them back, and forced them to be their wives. And I'm pretty sure that was not consensual. So if God governs morality, does it really matter if he can change his mind on a whim? If in the Old Testament it's okay to rape, but in the New Testament it's forbidden outright? Is this really the God you want to base your morality off of?
Is there a place you could go, a philosophy that you could find that would justify this type of villainous activity against your fellow human? Yes, there is.
And that's the Old Testament.
A man by the name of Randy Thornhill and his co-worker Craig T. Palmer said, evolutionary theory applies to rape as it does to other areas of human affairs on both logical and evidentiary grounds. There's no legitimate scientific reason not to apply evolutionary or ultimate hypothesis to rape. Why does rape occur? Well, because human males evolved, and that's one of the overlapping things that came along with their evolution. Read this statement that he made. He said, rape is evolutionary, biological, and natural. Our male ancestors became ancestors in part because they conditionally used rape. Why are you sitting here watching or listening to this particular seminar? Well, because your ancestors in the past conditionally perpetrated this type of villainous criminal activity on their fellow, whatever you would want to call them, fellow humans, fellow subhumans, etc.
Okay, but is that wrong? And I don't mean morally, I mean factually. Is that factually incorrect? Because it's not. See, you said that you could justify rape using the idea of evolution, but what you just showed was an explanation of rape, and those are two totally different things. See, science doesn't justify anything. It doesn't say, this is okay to do because of this. Science says, this is what happens, and this is why it's happening. And that's all science really is. It's a method of finding the best explanation for observed phenomena. So yes, rape did and still does play a key role in evolution. And yes, one of your ancestors was a rapist. But that doesn't make it okay. This does not mean that it is morally acceptable. In no way does this mitigate the fact that it is harmful to the victim. And you'll notice that the majority of atheists aren't rapists. That's because atheist is not the same thing as a psychopath. And an evolutionist, which by the way is a real word, is again not the same thing as a psychopath.
Are you starting to see where this would go? Any activity, regardless of the horrible nature, regardless of the villainous criminality of it, could be justified based on an atheistic evolutionary idea.
No. From an atheistic evolutionary worldview, virtually everything has some sort of scientific explanation. but in no way does that make it okay. In no way does that make it morally acceptable, because morality is a totally different thing from scientific explanations. I, as an atheist, genuinely want to not harm beings more so than is necessary and is against the will of the victim. And that's not because I'm a good Christian. That's because I'm not a psychopath. You don't need religion to actually care about people. And if you do, then that says more about you than your religion.
Because after all, if there's no God, in Dostoevsky's book, The Brothers Karamazov, one of his characters said, if there is no God, all things are permissible. And that's the truth.
And we know that this is the atheistic point of view because a fictional character said this in a fictional book. No, in atheism, not everything is permissible. Because while there is no God that we have any sort of obligation to answer to, we still have to answer to each other. We still have to answer to the people that we care about. And we have to answer to ourselves. And for most people, they, within themselves, do not want to harm other people.